You know, there's something profoundly interesting about the way we connect with other human beings. And I want to talk to you today about something that might be uncomfortable for some of you to hear, but it's important. It's about friendship, about connection, about why some people seem to struggle with forming and maintaining meaningful relationships while others seem to attract friends naturally. And I want you to understand something right from the start. This isn't about judgment, this is about awareness. This is about waking up to patterns in our own behavior that might be keeping us isolated when what we really want, what we really need, is connection. The truth is, there are certain personality traits that create barriers between us and other people. And here's what's beautiful about this. Once we become aware of these traits, once we shine a light on them, we can change them. We're not stuck. We're never stuck. We have the power within us to transform every single aspect of our lives, including how we relate to others. Let me start by saying this. If you find yourself without friends, if you find yourself sitting alone, wondering why others don't seem to want to spend time with you, there's a reason. And that reason isn't that you're fundamentally flawed. It isn't that you're unworthy of love and connection. The reason is that somewhere along the way, you've developed patterns of thinking and behaving that push people away instead of drawing them close. And the magnificent thing about patterns is that they can be changed. They can be rewritten. You can become a completely different person in your relationships if you choose to do the work. So let's talk about the first trait that people who struggle with friendships often share. It's this constant need to be right. You know what I'm talking about. Every conversation becomes a debate. Every discussion becomes an opportunity to prove that you know more, that you understand better, that your opinion is the correct one. And let me tell you something. When you're always trying to be right, you're actually being wrong about what matters most. What matters most isn't being right. What matters most is connection. What matters most is understanding. What matters most is making the other person feel heard and valued. Think about it. When you're with someone who always has to be right, how does it feel? It feels exhausting, doesn't it? It feels like you can never just have a simple conversation without it turning into a competition. And here's what happens. People start avoiding you. Not because they don't like you as a person, but because being around you feels like work. It feels like they constantly have to defend themselves, constantly have to prove themselves, constantly have to be on guard. And you know what's underneath this need to always be right? It's insecurity. It's fear. It's this deep belief that if you're not right, if you don't know the answer, if you make a mistake, then somehow you're less than. You're not enough. But that's not true. That has never been true. Your worth isn't determined by how much you know or how many times you can prove someone else wrong. Your worth is inherent. It's built into you. It's part of your very essence as a human being. When you let go of this need to be right, when you allow yourself to simply be present with another person without needing to correct them or educate them or prove your superiority, something magical happens. Space opens up. Connection becomes possible. People start to feel safe around you because they know they won't be judged or criticized or made to feel stupid. And that's when real friendship can begin. The second trait that keeps people isolated is something I call emotional unavailability. Now, this one is tricky because a lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're open. They think they're sharing. But what they're really doing is keeping themselves protected, walled off, defended against any real vulnerability. Here's what emotional unavailability looks like. Someone asks you how you're doing, and you say fine, even when you're not fine. Someone tries to connect with you on a feeling level, and you intellectualize everything. You talk about facts and ideas and theories, but you never talk about how you actually feel. You never let anyone see the real you, the you that's scared sometimes, the you that feels lonely, the you that doesn't have all the answers. And I understand why people do this, I really do. Vulnerability is scary. Opening up means risking rejection. It means letting someone see your imperfections, your wounds, your struggles. But here's what you need to understand. Vulnerability is the pathway to connection. It's the only pathway to real, genuine, meaningful connection. When you keep yourself defended, when you refuse to let people in, you might protect yourself from pain, but you also protect yourself from love, from friendship, from all the beautiful things that make life worth living. Think about the people you feel closest to in your life, the people you really trust. What made those relationships special? It was vulnerability. It was those moments when someone shared something real with you, something true, something that mattered. And when you shared back, that's what creates the bond. That's what makes a relationship meaningful. If you want friends, you have to be willing to be seen. Not the perfect version of yourself that you present to the world, but the real you. the messy, imperfect, sometimes confused you, because that's who people actually connect with. Nobody connects with perfection. Nobody relates to someone who seems to have it all together all the time. What we connect with is humanity. What we relate to is realness. Now, the third trait that keeps people friendless is something that might surprise you. It's negativity. It's this constant focus on what's wrong, what's bad, what's not working. It's complaining and criticizing and finding fault with everything and everyone. And look, I'm not saying you should be fake. I'm not saying you should pretend everything is wonderful when it's not. But there's a difference between being honest about challenges and being chronically negative. When you're always negative, when you're always complaining, when you're always focused on problems, you drain the energy out of every interaction. People don't want to be around that. It's not because they don't care about you or because they're shallow. It's because energy is real. The emotional energy you bring to an interaction affects everyone involved. And when your energy is consistently negative, heavy, draining, people naturally pull away, not out of meanness, but out of self-preservation. And here's the thing about negativity. It becomes a habit. You might not even realize you're doing it. You think you're just being realistic, just telling the truth, just expressing your opinions. But what you're actually doing is creating an environment where joy can't exist, where lightness can't exist, where fun can't exist. And who wants to spend time in that kind of environment? The beautiful news is that you can change this. You can train yourself to notice the good as much as the bad. You can practice gratitude. You can look for what's working instead of what's not. And this isn't about being in denial or pretending problems don't exist. It's about balance. It's about recognizing that life contains both difficulties and blessings, both challenges and gifts. And when you start focusing more on the gifts, more on the blessings, more on what's good and right and beautiful in your life, you become a different kind of person to be around. You become someone who lifts others up instead of dragging them down. The fourth trait that creates barriers to friendship is selfishness. And before you get defensive, let me explain what I mean. Selfishness isn't just about being greedy or taking more than your share. It's about making everything about you. It's about dominating conversations with your stories, your problems, your opinions, your experiences. It's about not asking questions, not showing genuine interest in other people's lives, not being present for others when they need support. True friendship is reciprocal. It's a give and take. It's about caring for the other person as much as you care for yourself. It's about being curious about their life, their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences. It's about showing up for them, not just when it's convenient for you, but when they actually need you. When you're selfish in your relationships, when you're only thinking about what you can get rather than what you can give, people feel used. They feel like a means to an end rather than a valued human being. And that feeling causes them to withdraw. They might not tell you directly. They might just slowly fade away, become less available, stop reaching out, and you're left wondering what happened, why you don't have any friends. But the solution is simple, even if it's not easy. Start giving, start showing up, start asking questions and really listening to the answers. Start being there for people without expecting anything in return. Start caring about others as much as you care about yourself. When you shift from a mentality of what can I get to, what can I give, everything changes. You become the kind of person others want to be around. You become a true friend. And this doesn't mean you should neglect your own needs. It doesn't mean you should become a doormat or let people take advantage of you. Healthy relationships have boundaries. Healthy relationships involve both people caring for themselves and for each other. What I'm talking about is moving away from the extreme of only thinking about yourself, only caring about your own needs, only being interested in your own life. The fifth trait that keeps people isolated is perhaps the most insidious of all. It's judgment. It's this constant evaluation of others, this mental scorecard where you're always deciding whether people measure up to your standards. And here's the truth. Nobody can meet all your standards. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is going to do everything the way you think it should be done or believe everything you believe or behave exactly as you think they should behave. When you judge people harshly, when you criticize them, when you focus on their flaws and their mistakes and their shortcomings, you create distance. You create a wall between you and them. Because people can feel judgment even when you don't say anything. It comes through in your body language, in your tone of voice, in the way you look at them. And when people feel judged by you, they don't feel safe. They don't feel accepted. They don't feel loved. and so they stay away. Real friendship requires acceptance. It requires seeing people as they are, not as you wish they would be. It requires understanding that everyone is on their own path, at their own level of growth, dealing with their own challenges. It requires compassion instead of judgment. It requires kindness instead of criticism. And I want to be very clear about something. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything everyone does. It doesn't mean you can't have standards for how you want to be treated. It doesn't mean you have to accept abuse or mistreatment. What it means is that you recognize the humanity in others. You recognize that people are doing the best they can with what they know and what they have. You recognize that making mistakes is part of being human, and that includes the people in your life. When you release judgment, when you practice acceptance, when you choose to see people with compassion and understanding, something shifts. People feel it. They feel seen by you. They feel accepted by you. And that feeling of being truly seen and accepted is one of the most precious gifts you can give another human being. That's what creates lasting friendship. Now, I want you to take a moment and really be honest with yourself. As I've talked about these 5 traits, have you recognized yourself in any of them? Have you felt that uncomfortable twinge of recognition, that awareness that maybe, just maybe, you've been engaging in some of these behaviors? If you have, that's actually wonderful. That's the first step toward change. You can't change what you're not aware of. Awareness is where all transformation begins. And I want to remind you of something crucial. You are not your behaviors. You are not your patterns. You are not your habits. These are things you do, not who you are. Who you are is this infinite, powerful, creative being with the capacity to change anything about your life that isn't working. You have the power to become a completely different person in your relationships. You have the power to attract wonderful friendships into your life. But it starts with you. It starts with your willingness to look at yourself honestly and make changes. Let me tell you something about the nature of change. Change isn't something that happens to you. Change is something you choose. Every single day, in every single moment, you're choosing who you want to be. You're choosing how you want to show up in the world. You're choosing how you want to relate to others. And if your current choices aren't bringing you the friendships you desire, you can make different choices. You can choose to let go of the need to be right and instead focus on understanding. You can choose to be vulnerable instead of defended. You can choose to focus on the positive instead of dwelling on the negative. You can choose to give generously instead of taking selfishly. You can choose acceptance instead of judgment. These are all choices available to you right now, in this moment. But here's what I've learned about change. It requires commitment. It requires practice. You're not going to transform overnight. You've been developing these patterns for years, maybe decades. They're wired into your brain. They're automatic. So when you decide to change, you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be willing to mess up and try again. You have to be willing to notice when you fall back into old patterns and gently guide yourself back to the new way you want to be. And you know what helps? Having a clear vision of who you want to become. Close your eyes for a moment and see yourself as a person who has wonderful, fulfilling friendships. See yourself as someone people want to be around. See yourself laughing with friends, supporting them through difficult times, celebrating their successes. Feel what it feels like to have that kind of connection in your life. Really feel it. Let that vision pull you forward. Let it inspire you to do the work of changing these patterns. Because the work is worth it. Having genuine friendships, having people in your life who care about you and who you care about, having connections that nourish your soul. This is one of the greatest joys of being human. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated. We're social creatures. We need each other. We thrive in connection. And when you remove the barriers you've been putting up, when you let go of the traits that have been keeping you isolated, you open yourself up to that connection. Let me talk for a moment about what happens when you start making these changes. At first, it might feel awkward. It might feel uncomfortable. When you try to be vulnerable after years of being defended, it's scary. When you try to listen instead of always talking about yourself, it feels strange. When you try to accept people instead of judging them, it goes against your habitual way of thinking. This is normal. This is part of the process. Don't let that discomfort stop you. Push through it. Keep practicing. Keep choosing the new way, even when the old way feels more comfortable. And here's what you'll start to notice. People respond differently to you. They open up more. They seek out your company. They want to spend time with you. Because you've become someone who makes them feel good. You've become someone who lifts them up instead of tearing them down. You've become someone who's genuinely interested in them. You've become someone who's real and authentic, and that's magnetic. That attracts people. But I want to caution you about something. Don't make these changes just to get friends. Don't make these changes as a manipulation tactic. Make these changes because you genuinely want to become a better person. Make these changes because you recognize that these traits don't serve you. They don't make you happy. They don't bring you peace. Make these changes for you, not for what you think you'll get from others. Because here's a paradox. When you become the kind of person who would make a good friend, not to get friends, but simply because that's who you want to be, friends show up. They appear in your life, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes people you've known for years suddenly become closer. Sometimes new people enter your life. The universe responds to who you're being, not to what you're trying to get. And let me say something else that's important. As you change, as you grow, as you become more aware and more conscious in your relationships, you might notice that some people fall away. People who were in your life before might not stick around, and that's okay. That's actually perfect, because those people were probably matching your old energy, your old patterns. As you evolve, your relationships evolve too. Some relationships will deepen and become more meaningful. Others will naturally fade. Don't hold on out of fear. Trust that the right people will be in your life at the right time. Now, I want to address something that some of you might be thinking. You might be thinking, but I've tried to make friends and it hasn't worked. I've put myself out there and I still end up alone. And I hear you. I understand that pain. But I want you to consider this. Were you really putting your authentic self out there? Or were you putting out some version of yourself that you thought people would like? Were you being vulnerable and real? Or were you still defended and protected? Were you genuinely interested in others? Or were you mostly focused on how you were being perceived? Making real friends requires risk. It requires the courage to be who you truly are, not who you think you should be. It requires the willingness to be rejected. Because the truth is, not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone is going to want to be your friend. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need everyone to like you. You just need a few genuine connections. A few people who really see you and appreciate you and want to share their life with you. And those people exist. They're out there. Right now, somewhere in the world, there are people who would love to be your friend, who would appreciate exactly who you are, who would value what you have to offer. But you have to meet them halfway. You have to do your part. You have to show up as the best version of yourself. You have to work on these traits that create barriers. You have to be willing to grow and change and evolve. Let me share something with you about the nature of friendship. True friendship isn't about having things in common, although that can help. True friendship isn't about convenience, although that matters too. True friendship is about connection at the level of the heart. It's about seeing each other's humanity. It's about accepting each other completely, flaws and all. It's about being there for each other through good times and challenging times. It's about celebrating each other's successes and supporting each other through failures. And this kind of friendship is possible for everyone. It doesn't matter how old you are, where you live, what you do for a living, what you look like. None of that matters. What matters is who you're being. What matters is your energy. What matters is your willingness to connect authentically with another human being. So here's what I want you to do. Starting today, starting right now, make a commitment to yourself. Commit to becoming aware of these 5 traits in your own behavior. When you find yourself needing to be right, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, is being right more important than this relationship? When you find yourself being emotionally unavailable, challenge yourself to share something real. When you notice yourself being negative, actively look for something positive to focus on. When you catch yourself being selfish, ask what you can give instead of what you can get. When you feel yourself judging someone, shift to curiosity and compassion instead. This is the work. This is how you change. Not through some dramatic transformation that happens overnight, but through small choices made consistently over time. Each time you choose the new way instead of the old way, you're rewiring your brain. You're creating new patterns. You're becoming a different person. And be kind to yourself in this process. You're going to mess up. You're going to fall back into old patterns. You're going to have moments where you're right back where you started. That's okay. That's part of being human. Don't beat yourself up. Don't judge yourself harshly. Just notice what happened, learn from it, and try again. Self-compassion is essential on this path of growth. I also want you to understand something about the people you meet. Everyone you encounter is dealing with their own struggles, their own fears, their own pain. Everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. When you remember this, it becomes easier to be patient with people. It becomes easier to be kind. It becomes easier to accept them as they are. And when you approach people with this understanding, with this compassion, something beautiful happens. They feel it. They feel seen by you in a way that maybe no one else sees them. They feel accepted by you in a way that maybe they've never been accepted before. And that creates connection. That creates friendship. Think about what you really want in a friend. You want someone who listens to you, right? Someone who's there for you, someone who accepts you as you are, someone who's honest with you but kind, someone who celebrates your wins and supports you through your losses, someone who's reliable and trustworthy, someone who makes you feel good about yourself, someone who brings joy and lightness to your life. Now, here's the question. Are you being that kind of friend to others? Are you listening? Are you showing up? Are you accepting? Are you honest and kind? Are you celebrating others' successes? Are you supporting them through difficulties? Are you reliable? Are you bringing joy? If you want these qualities in a friend, you have to embody these qualities yourself. You have to be the friend you wish you had. This is what it means to take responsibility for your relationships. It's easy to blame other people for your loneliness. It's easy to say that people are shallow, that no one cares, that everyone is too busy or too self-absorbed. And sure, some of that might be true. But you can't control other people. You can only control yourself. You can only work on your own growth, your own behavior, your own energy. And when you do that work, when you really commit to becoming the kind of person who can have deep, meaningful friendships, everything changes. Not because other people change, but because you change. And when you change, your experience of life changes. The opportunities that show up change. The people who come into your life change. Let me tell you about what I believe is at the root of these 5 traits that keep people friendless. At the core, it's fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being rejected. Fear of being hurt. Fear of not being in control. Fear of being seen for who you really are. And so you develop these protective mechanisms. You need to be right to feel worthy. You stay emotionally unavailable to avoid being hurt. You focus on the negative to feel like you have some control. You act selfish because you're afraid there's not enough for everyone. You judge others to feel superior and protect your own ego. But here's the truth that can set you free. You are enough. Right now, exactly as you are enough. You are worthy of love and friendship and connection. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to show up as your authentic self and connect with others from that place of authenticity. When you really get this, when you really understand that your worth is inherent and not something you have to earn or prove, these protective mechanisms start to fall away. You don't need to be right because you know you're valuable either way. You can be vulnerable because rejection doesn't diminish your worth. You can be positive because you trust in the goodness of life. You can be generous because you know there's abundance for everyone. You can release judgment because you don't need to feel superior to feel okay about yourself. This is the foundation of everything. This understanding that you are fundamentally okay, fundamentally worthy, fundamentally lovable just as you are. When you live from this understanding, relationships become so much easier. Connection becomes natural. Friendship flows. So how do you develop this understanding? How do you really know, not just intellectually but in your bones, that you're enough? It starts with your relationship with yourself. It starts with how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself, how you think about yourself. If you're constantly criticizing yourself, if you're never satisfied with yourself, if you're always focused on what's wrong with you, how can you possibly believe you're enough? Start treating yourself the way you would treat a dear friend. Speak to yourself with kindness. Acknowledge your strengths as well as your areas for growth. Celebrate your wins, no matter how small. Forgive yourself when you mess up. Take care of yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit. When you develop a loving relationship with yourself, when you genuinely like who you are, everything else follows. And this isn't about being narcissistic or self-absorbed. This is about healthy self-love, which is the foundation for being able to truly love others. You can't give what you don't have. If you don't have love and acceptance for yourself, you can't genuinely offer it to others. But when you do have it, when you're overflowing with it, sharing it with others becomes natural and effortless. I want to return to these 5 traits one more time because I want to make sure you really understand how to work with them. The need to always be right. Work on developing intellectual humility. Recognize that there are many ways to see things, many perspectives that have value. Practice saying, that's an interesting point, I hadn't thought of it that way. Practice admitting when you don't know something or when you made a mistake. This doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, and it makes you someone people can relate to. Emotional unavailability. Work on developing emotional intelligence and courage. Start small. Share one real feeling with someone you trust. Notice what happens. Notice that you survive. Notice that often it brings you closer to the other person. Practice identifying what you're feeling. Practice expressing those feelings in words. The more you do this, the easier it becomes. Negativity. Work on developing gratitude and perspective. Each day, write down 3 things you're grateful for. When something goes wrong, ask yourself what you can learn from it or what opportunity it might be creating. Train your brain to look for the good. This doesn't mean ignoring problems. It means balancing your view so you're seeing the whole picture, not just the negative parts. Selfishness. Work on developing generosity and genuine interest in others. Practice asking people questions about their lives and really listening to their answers. Practice doing kind things for others without expecting anything in return. Practice thinking about what would make someone else happy in doing that thing. Notice how good it feels to give, to contribute, to make a difference in someone's life. Judgment. Work on developing compassion and acceptance. When you notice yourself judging someone, pause and ask yourself what they might be going through that you don't know about. Practice the phrase, everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. Practice looking for the good in people instead of focusing on their flaws. Practice accepting people as they are instead of wanting them to be different. These practices, done consistently over time, will transform you. They will transform your relationships. They will transform your life. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to wait until you're perfect to start experiencing benefits. Even small changes create ripples. Even small shifts in your behavior will cause people to respond to you differently. Remember, you're not doing this to become someone you're not. You're doing this to remove the barriers that are hiding who you truly are. At your core, you are loving, you are open, you are generous, you are accepting, you are connected, but these traits have gotten covered up by fear and pain and old protective mechanisms that aren't serving you anymore. You're not building something new. You're uncovering what was always there. And as you do this work, as you become more authentic, more vulnerable, more present, more giving, more accepting, you'll find that not only do you attract more friends, but the quality of those friendships is different. They're deeper, they're more meaningful, they're more satisfying, because you're showing up as your real self. And that allows others to show up as their real selves too. And that's where the magic of true friendship lives, in that space of mutual authenticity and acceptance. Your life can be filled with wonderful friendships. You can have people who truly see you and appreciate you and want to be part of your life. You can experience the joy and support and love that comes from genuine connection. But it requires your willingness to look at yourself honestly, to recognize where you've been creating barriers, and to do the work of removing those barriers. It requires your commitment to growth and change. It requires your courage to be vulnerable and authentic. And you have all of these things within you. You have the self-awareness to see what needs to change. You have the strength to do the work. You have the courage to be vulnerable. You have the capacity to transform completely. Everything you need is already inside you. You just have to choose to use it. You just have to choose to become the person you were meant to be. A person who connects, who loves, who shares life with others in meaningful ways. So make that choice. Make it today. Make it right now. Commit to becoming aware of these 5 traits in yourself. Commit to working on them consistently. Commit to being the kind of person who can have beautiful friendships. And then watch what happens. Watch as your life transforms. Watch as connection and joy and love flow into your experience. Watch as you realize that you were never truly alone. You just had some barriers up that were keeping people at a distance. Remove those barriers. Open your heart. Show up as your authentic self. Be willing to be vulnerable. Be willing to give. Be willing to accept. Be willing to see others with compassion. And you will find what you've been looking for. You will find the friendships that make life rich and meaningful. You will find the connections that nourish your soul. You will find your people. This is your invitation. This is your opportunity. This is your time to change your life at the level of relationships. Everything you desire in terms of friendship and connection is available to you. You just have to be willing to do what it takes to allow it in. And I believe in you. I believe you have what it takes. I believe you can transform these patterns and create the connected life you truly want. Now it's time for you to believe it too. It's time for you to take action. It's time for you to step into the fullness of who you can be in relationship with others. The time is now. The person is you. The choice is yours.